there's some kind of really bad problem, we'll shut it down and do it again. Okay?
Thanks for joining this week's GoErie live discussion. Today, Erie Times-News reporter Kevin Flowers will be talking with Marty Nwachukwu, community organizer of Erie County United. I am Erie Times-News online reporter Sarah Grabsky, and I'm going to be moderating your GoErie live comments today. Thanks to Gannon University for sponsoring these live discussions every week. Enjoy the conversation. Kevin?
Thanks, Sarah. And Marty, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
I appreciate you being here. Let's start off a little bit. Just tell people about yourself and kind of how you got into this community organizing work, and then we'll get into a little bit about what Erie County United is.
Okay. I am actually born in Nigeria but raised in Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
I first set my roots in Erie as an Edinburgh graduate. I graduated in 2015 with a degree in individualized studies, my concentration being history and poli-sci, so I like to say that I actually got lucky and I'm kind of doing what I studied. After I graduated, I worked at home for a little bit at a nonprofit through AmeriCorps,
Mm-hmm.
and then in 2016 got hired on as a field organizer for the Democratic campaign, which is a big campaign here, as we all know. So.
What did you learn from working for a campaign like that?
I think presidential campaigns are kind of like a boot camp for field organizers or anyone who goes into community organizing. It's tough hours, tough conversations, tough leadership dynamics. It's boot camp. That's how I can describe it. It was a great learning experience. It was great learning more about behind the scenes. Prior to that job, I didn't realize how much went into political campaigns on the field ground. So
You get a lot of a sense of the dynamics of politics and what some of the more important aspects are.
Yes.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about what Erie County United is. I think that a lot of times when I write about your group, I've written a lot of pieces that reflect on what kind of work that you guys are doing. People don't really understand what the group is. So in your words, explain to people what Erie County United is and what your main issues are.
So Erie County United is part of the PA United Political Action Committee. So we are one of many counties, Beaver County, Washington County, Pittsburgh being the base of all of those organizations. And in 10 years, they have done a lot of work. But in 2016, seeing the numbers, how certain counties flipped, and realizing there weren't any community organizing going on in those specific counties, they decided to branch out into those counties and build groundwork between campaigns. So people are talking about voting and other issues beyond the big presidential, congressional, midterm campaigns.
And you're talking about, when you mention flip, you're talking about the kind of residuals from the 2016 election.
Pennsylvania as a whole went red, but Erie County, Beaver County, and a few other counties and the collar counties as well flipped from blue to red. So
okay.
Yes.
What are some of the core issues that Erie County United feels are important or are kind of your tentpole things there?
At the root of all our issues is economic justice. Economic inequity leads to a whole bunch of other issues, whether it be educational inequity, college access, transportation access, job access. All of those stem from economic inequity. So that's the root of our issues, and that's where we branch off.
And how do you draw a nexus there between you have an issue that's an economic justice issue, but getting people to understand it, not only understand it, but understand how it affects them?
So we do a lot of canvassing, going to events, sitting down with people in the community one-on-one, and talking to them about their issues and connecting to them how their issues, depending on their life circumstances, are circumstances of what happened in their own individual lives, but also connecting it to systemic issues. What's going on in the city, what's going on in the state level, and how that contacts or connects with your own personal lifestyle. Okay.
Some of the specific issues that you've been involved with in terms of as a group that you've made important are living wages, things like that. The community benefit agreements is another one. Can you explain to people who don't know what community benefit agreements are, what they are, and why your group feels that they are important?
Simply put, they are a tool used around economic development. It's nothing new. Many regions around our country, big and small alike, use them as a way to close the gap in equity. So as development comes, If things are good, sometimes the gap gets a little bigger. If things are bad, the gap gets worse. So they use it as a tool of making sure that as certain things come in, they intentionally put in tools to make sure that certain communities either get jobs or educational priorities. It's different for different communities, right. And when we started here in Erie County, after canvassing for a few months, we decided that after talking to people and looking at the numbers, that employment was the issue that we were going to focus community benefit agreements on in Erie County.
Okay. And they've worked in other places. I know Pittsburgh has used them when the arena was built, things like that. Mm-hmm. What else do you try to let people know in terms of why a CBA is important in a community like this?
Intentionality is what makes a difference. And a CBA being one of the tools. Mm-hmm. Is a means of doing that. So we try to make it clear to our representatives that if it's not this tool, there needs to be some tool where you are intentionally zoning or hiring or making stipulations to make sure that residents who are never or almost never represented mm-hmm. or given to are brought to the table in the conversation. And sometimes the conversation is just bringing people to the table.
Right. I remember talking to John Goldstein about this, mm-hmm. and him mentioning to me when I did a story about community benefit agreements that one of the hurdles a lot of times is to get local leadership to even understand the mechanism, mm-hmm. to understand what they are. Can you expound on that?
Expound.
And is that a hurdle, and is that something that you've seen here?
Yes.
In trying to get the context and get people to understand what community benefit agreements are and how they could be beneficial?
The hurdles here have been getting our representatives to understand. We've had, I believe, 3 study sessions, 1 roundtable. We had John Goldstein, who is a consultant from Partnership for Working Families, come and explain it. And I understand it is a bit of a confusing tool to representatives, given they have never seen anything like it before, but given other communities have done it, and we've brought the examples across the board, and there's research out there abound. It's out there for them to learn.
Okay. All right. Let's talk a little bit more about living wages then, in terms of what kind of work you do on the ground mm-hmm. to promote that.
So a lot of our work is just getting the word out, bringing attention to certain issues. So we do a lot of canvassing. We do a lot of social media. We do a lot of community events or partnering with other people around community events. Around the minimum wage, it has been a statewide issue, so that has meant us holding actions with other people around the state as they've gone to go talk to their representatives, us going to Laughlин's office and mm-hmm. sitting down and talking with him and rallying outside. A lot
like the Fight for 15 stuff that goes on in other states?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Oh, well, in here as well?
Yes.
Okay. And let's talk a little bit, too, about, in staying with that, some people see that as a pretty big hurdle in terms of how you get, job creators, manufacturers, people like that on board with the whole concept of living wages when businesses kind of have a lot of times have a different mandate or a different mission to kind of control costs and make money for either themselves or their investors.
Yes.
So, there's a push-pull there. What's the best way, or how does Erie County United see the most effective way to deal with that?
I won't speak as Erie County United, but I'll speak as
Sure.
the governor's proposal. The governor proposed a few months ago going from 12 to 15 over until 2025, mm-hmm. and using that graduated system as giving business owners a break to getting to that 15. And I would argue by 2025, 15 will not be enough. People are struggling now on $7.25. People are struggling now on $10 an hour. Mm-hmm. $10 an hour is a minimum wage for home care workers. People are struggling. And to argue that those people shouldn't be comfortable to manage costs for reason A or B is unreasonable. It's a drain on our economy. It's a drain on our resources. These people need to be treated respectfully.
Where do you think the disconnection comes from, or the disconnect comes from, with not even just employers, but with regular average members of the community not seeing the need for increased wages?
I think because we don't see ourselves as a community. It's an us versus them mentality. Mm-hmm. I have my own. They should do better to have their own. But at the end of the day, when our school districts are struggling, people are struggling to make ends meet, you're still paying the brunt of that.
Right.
So if we raise wages and people can make their ends meet and relieve themselves off of certain assistance programs, then we all do better and we all feel better and the community thrives.
Okay.
Right now we're just managing.
Okay. You've also been active as an organization in terms of the conversation about a community college here.
Okay.
Explain what your main issue is, what you would like to see in terms of that, and any concerns that you have about the proposals that are out there.
We have partnered with Empower Erie, who's taking the lead on the community college issue. What has been proposed by the county, and they're working for a deal with the MPRC, is not a real community college. And what we would like to see is a brick and mortar institution that has resources for community members of all ages, resources for students regardless of what income they have, what they're looking to get out of when they graduate, regardless of what they want to get from classes. We want a real community college.
Do you think that's possible given the political climate, given what the pull that Senator Scarnati has on this, given his connection with the MPRC? Some people wonder whether this is what we're going to get, and so let's make the best out of it, kind of thing. And I wonder if that's what's going on. Do you think some of that is in play? And if so, how do you combat that?
Speaking frankly, why is Senator Scarnati making decisions for Erie County and our community college? Our representatives should be standing up for us. Our state leadership, our county leadership should be stepping up for us and saying this is what we need, regardless of what politics are going on in Harrisburg.
Okay. What are some of the other issues that Erie County United is whether it's things that you've come out on already or some of the things that are in the pipeline in terms of maybe projects or initiatives that you're behind?
Coming up the pipeline, education funding formula, obviously gearing up for 2020 and registering voters, and just continuing to have conversations with community members. And given our time here, we've gotten more people to get engaged, come out to community meetings, come out to city council meetings. We're liking the numbers we're seeing, but the goal is always to see more.
Okay. How many members does your group have right now?
Active 30 to 40, contactless in the hundreds.
Okay. And if you could explain to people why this kind of mechanism, why a community social justice group, which is something we haven't seen in Erie County in this kind of number or with this kind of organization in the past, why it's important to have something like that in place in this community?
Government should go beyond voting at the polls and then hoping representation represents you. What we do is educate people, sit down with people, and make them understand how government works and how they should be involved with it, whether it be showing up to local city council meetings, phoning their Congress members around healthcare and other issues, or running for office. Government goes beyond us just sitting and spectating. So our role in that is to invigorate people, close the education gap, and get people involved.
Well, and there's, you mentioned running for office. There's been recently there was a city council primary, county council races, and explain what a group like yours involvement is with specific candidates. Do you endorse? Do you try to educate people on the issues of the candidates? What's that mechanism look like in terms of your group?
Since we're a nonprofit, we always focus any election work on the issues, whether specific candidates or campaigns align with our issues, and when they do, then we may or may not endorse. That's how we work.
All right. Is there any danger in endorsing specific candidates that you see?
How so?
In terms of whether your group may be aligned with their platform in some people's minds. Is that something you think about at all?
So you're never going to be 100% aligned with any given politician. But what we hope whenever we support given specific candidates is that they're going to be better than the other candidates. In 2017, we put a lot of work into supporting, or 2018 rather, support into helping Governor Wolf get elected in our county. Wolf may not be perfect on all the issues that we care about, but he was definitely a better candidate than Scott Wagner. Okay.
All right, and let's talk a little bit about LERTA, because your group spent a long time with examining and looking at the tax abatement program, which recently passed the 3 taxing bodies. A lot of people weren't happy with what came out of that in terms of there were people who wanted kind of tangible benefit mechanisms attached to LERTA. So explain, if we go back a little bit, why you guys got involved with the LERTA discussion, how that progressed. I know that you had even put an ordinance together with some suggestions. If we can kind of go back and explain step by step why you thought that was an issue that Erie County United needed to get involved in.
LERTA, our involvement with LERTA stems from the Community Benefit Agreements campaign, from the Economic Justice campaign. LERTA was a tool we recognized that was coming up we could have used to attach some CBA language to. And that's primarily why we got involved with that fight. And also, our involvement in that conversation made the public more aware of the processes of government, made them more aware about the tax systems we have going on. So beyond just trying to get some local hire stipulations and some other enhancements to the original LERTA, we also opened up the conversations to more residents.
Okay. In terms of attaching, a CBA or any other kind of benefit to that, and we'll get to what happened later with the Community Reinvestment Fund. There were people that argued that this is an economic development tool. It's not a job training program or creator, things like that. Maybe it might not be the best mechanism to fight some of these battles. How would you respond to that?
I believe you should use every resource and tool you have to help residents. And in the prior LERTA, there were local hire stipulations, and what we were asking was to enhance that. The argument that these tools are not meant for that. If you're trying to revitalize our economy, then residents should be a priority in that new economy, and that's the argument I would make.
What did you think of the Community Reinvestment Fund that the mayor came up with as kind of an attachment for LERTA?
I believe it was a good start. I believe that it's something that should have already been in place, and I also believe that $25,000 for a city of under 95 or 96,000 people is not enough.
And you're talking about the money from the revolving loan fund that they would place into this account every year, along with this new kind of LERTA application fee, and that money going towards there.
And I commend them on their first step, but I also want to recognize that was a result of us putting pressure on the mayor and city council to give the community
and that kind of goes to what I was going to ask you about. Does your organization see even the application of that, the creation of this community investment fund, as a win in any kind of context?
It's a win for both us and the city and residents that something came out of this for the residents.
Okay. All right.
But there could always be more. There can always be more.
Are there? Go ahead. Sure.
How often are you guys meeting with the mayor and different representatives to kind of go over this platform that you're talking about, or different issues? How often do you sit down with them?
We try. At least there's two of us that are organized or in the organization. We try to attend city council meetings regularly, and as different issues come up, we contact local city council members, the mayor, county council via email, call, in person. Does
Erie County United have an official stance, for lack of a better term, on the Erie Refocus plan?
Official stance? No, I do not.
Well, what would be the unofficial stance on that?
Intentionality. There needs to be language in there and language in practice where residents are brought to the table in decision making. Residents are included in local hire, housing protection, scholarship funds. Essentially, community benefit agreements would be our stance.
So do you believe that any of that is happening, or that it's happening to a degree that you're, I don't want to say satisfied with, but that is palatable enough for your group?
I would say that we have pushed ourselves into those conversations and brought residents into those conversations, but there being a system already in place for residents to be part of these decision-making processes, no, I don't think that really exists.
Okay. And is there any way that you can try to create a mechanism to have more conversation beyond just going to a city council meeting, to get a regular meeting with any city officials or the mayor, or do you explore anything like that?
We have, and I would be open to having more meetings with our local representatives if they will have us.
Okay. All right. what are some of the other things? I mean, we've talked about a lot of different issues here. Is there anything else that maybe Erie County United hasn't come out and taken an official stance on, but plans to, or would, other than elections? You mentioned that a little while ago. Any other social justice or economic justice issue?
As a community group, one of our other goals is also coalition building. So we built a coalition around the community benefit agreements, and we also built a coalition called People for a Livable Erie. So one of our other jobs is to bring community groups together and community leaders together and bring residents into that. So whatever other groups are doing and they're fighting, we will be there to support them.
And People for a Livable Erie, actually, if you can explain a little bit about the platform, that's my term, that you came up with in terms, and what some of those issues are.
People for a Livable Erie's platform is pretty much everything that I've been saying. Pro-worker, anti-racism work, pro-education, and some other issues, and creating tangible policies around those things, because we hear a lot of talk about community investment things and this and that, but normal residents want to see tangible things. So when we created the platform, we created some visionary goals for what city and local government could do, but some also tangible ones. One of them being fixing the food desert in the downtown lower 26th area. And
one of the last things I wanted to ask you is, you came here a couple of years ago to do this work. How satisfied are you with where you are, and where do you want to go?
I'll be quite honest. When I first moved here, I was worried that I wouldn't like it here. It was going to be too small.
I think I remember you telling me that in an interview.
Yeah, but I've actually come to love it, and I think a lot of transplants come to love it. We recognize the beautiful natural resources. I like to go hike. The people here are awesome, and the people that I do the work with are what keep me doing the work. They're inspiring. They really have a lot of hope despite all the things and the things we push on issues. Despite all the talk we have about what we want to fix, people do have hope, and people do want to see change. Yep. So that's what keeps me going, and I plan to be here for a little while.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Marty, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate the context that you brought to this conversation, and I'm sure I'll be talking to you, very soon. So.
Thank you.
Thanks again to everyone who joined in and participated in this week's GoErie live discussion. This video will be available for replay on the GoErie Facebook page and on the GoErie homepage. Thanks also to Gannon University for sponsoring this discussion, and of course to Marty Nwachukwu of Erie County United for joining us today. You can find upcoming topics and guests on the GoErie Facebook page each week. Thanks for listening.